From AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, this is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Here we are, it's time for Laughbox, my favorite time of the week, and perhaps yours too. Well, we are 2 weeks post-conference, and I want to tell you what, if you were at the conference, you know that it was a fabulous humor conference. If you weren't, if you had a fear of missing out, a little FOMO going on, it was well-deserved because you missed a great conference. Awesome speakers, awesome relationships built. I'm going to tell you to put next year's conference on your calendar now. It'll be on our website, AATH.org, with some of the details really soon. I've got some interviews that I did at the conference that'll be coming up in the next few weeks, so you want to keep your ear open for those. But this week, I'm talking to my good friend, Dr. Tina Hallis, about positive psychology and her book, The Positive Edge. I had a really great time talking to her. I know you're going to get a lot from our conversation, so kick back and enjoy. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Laughbox, the official podcast of the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. And today, what's kind of cool is, my worlds collide. I get to talk to a good friend of mine who's a National Speaker Association friend, actually here in Wisconsin, about AATH stuff, kind of like, the positive emotions and stuff. I get to talk to Dr. Tina Hallis about, she's written a book. She's out there doing the Lord's work, making a positive impact all over the world in the workplace and in people's lives. So welcome, Tina, to Laughbox.
Hey, Chip. So excited to be here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I know we've tried a couple times, and finally, the stars aligned, and here we are.
Yay.
Yay. Now, for my listeners, if you could give them like the 411 on who Dr. Tina Hallis is.
Sure, you bet. I would say that I'm a little bit interesting in that my background is in science. I worked in biotech, in chemistry, in the lab for, almost 20 years. But then I had this life-changing experience where I discovered positive psychology. And we can get into how that happened more later maybe, but it was one of these things where I had never heard of this science. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I knew I was addicted. I was obsessed. I had to learn more. I went back and became certified, decided to just reinvent myself, leave the lab, hang up the lab coat, and really pursue sharing this information because I could see how I could benefit, and I just knew this could be great help to other people, especially workplaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just interested, that is a big switch from going into the lab into what you're doing now. That takes a lot of moxie. Well, you think about it. A lot of times, in a life cycle, we just, people looks like, well, you graduate from school, you get married, you find your vocation, and then you stick with that until you're ready to retire, and then you die. That's kind of like the thing, and you're just like, no, I'm reinventing myself. That's pretty scary stuff.
I didn't plan on it. Exactly like you described. I thought I would finish out my career in biotech and retire, and well, I'm going to skip the last thing you said. But it was a total surprise to me. I did not plan on this.
It's really fascinating. And I'm sure pieces that'll come through in our conversation. But before we start getting into the positive edge, because I want to talk about, what you do, and I want to talk about your book a little bit, I'm just going to ask a random question just to get our conversation going. So in the superhero world, who's your favorite superhero?
Ooh, gosh, we love to watch Marvel comic movies at our house, and I think I have a soft spot for Spider-Man.
Soft spot for Spider-Man. Now, when you were a kid, did you watch the Spider-Man cartoons?
I was we didn't get a lot of channels, so it was kind of a Gilligan's Island type of a childhood. not much superhero stuff there, but no, just I would say in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years of the cool Marvel movies that come out, Spider-Man, his powers are kind of limited, but he manages to make and do great things with what he can do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would concur with you on that. I never really thought I watched Spider-Man growing up. I was always a Spider-Man fan, and I like all the Marvel movies. And other Marvel worlds, I don't really have a favorite. I kind of like them all equally. On the DC world, I'm always a Batman guy. Just that's just me. I don't know why. Maybe because he's not an alien like Superman. Yeah, because really, I mean, there are two categories of people. There are Batman people and there are Superman people.
Okay.
I'm a Batman person. So anyway, had nothing to do with our conversation. I just like to get the conversation going. So let's talk a little bit about, your transition into positive psychology, and, we can, obviously hit in on your book, the contents in there. So, when you first started in this new venture into positive psychology, what were some of the most amazing things, for you? I mean, coming from a hard science world, into this other world that I don't want to say is fluffier. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's based on science. The research is, scientific. However, there's more of a different feeling to it than, where you came from. So what were some of the biggest changes or shifts in thought for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's definitely a softer science, I guess, is how I would refer to it. It's and the thing about science that I think was eye-opening for me, just even in my chemistry days, is science does not really prove anything. It provides evidence to support such and such. So, that's why things get disproved. But with positive psychology, what I love about this science that's so different than chemistry or biotechnology is that I can use it in my life. A lot of my chemistry and biotech stuff, I couldn't really take home and do much with it that day. There's a lot more long-term stuff. We were working on drug discovery assays and services. So it wasn't directly impactful to me, but this was like, wow, hey, this is how I can, a quick trick for how I can boost my mood. This is how I can, laugh more, how I can spend more time feeling grateful. And the evidence that they showed that not only does that feel better, which is sort of intuitive, but the studies are showing that it actually makes us smarter. We make better decisions. We're healthier. We're more resilient. And even if you don't, if you look at one of the studies or you read something in a book, you can run your own experiment, right? Just take this tip, this strategy, and see how it works for you. So it's the kind of science we can run and try out in our own lives.
That's interesting. So when you were working in the lab, you didn't have a home lab where you did scientific experiments. You had your beakers and your test tubes, and you weren't doing any of that?
Not a lot. No, I when my daughter was really young, I tried to buy some of those kits for her, but it wasn't quite the same.
It's so funny. So my brother is a chemical engineer, and so he was always, he'd bring they worked in a corn refining plant where they would make corn syrups and stuff, and so he would bring it home and he'd all right, so this is how this works, Chip. This is the amount that equals this amount of sugar. So instead of using sugar, we're going to replace it with this much of corn syrup right here. And he was all geeking out on, his conversions on that. I always thought it was kind of funny because I am not there's nothing scientific about me at all. But with the home lab, I was just thinking about,
Oh, okay, but as long as we're talking home lab and chemistry, there's one thing I gotta share. I did go into my daughter's third grade class to show them this super cool experiment. You take purple cabbage, and after you steam it, you capture the purple liquid, right, that forms from steaming it or boiling it. And now this is a pH indicator. You can add things like lemon juice and watch it turn pink, or add baking soda and watch it turn blue. It's so cool.
That is awesome. You're probably the coolest person that, went into the class. They're like, oh, look at that. That's pretty awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Now let's talk a little bit about your book. what spurred you to write it? What are some of the things some key things that when because I think like this, anybody that writes a book, it's a labor of love. You're wanting, people to take a few things from it, and we'll get into some of those things you think are key takeaways for people, but, what pushed you to, put pen to paper and actually get it out there?
Yeah, it was interesting early on when I started this. So let me think. I discovered positive psychology in 2011, pretty much reinvented myself the beginning of 2013. And probably sometime towards the end of that year or the next year, I started writing weekly positivity tips.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was just, short little, maybe 3-4 minute reads, because I wanted to put stuff out there to just help spread positivity, give people these simple little tools that they could use.
Mm-hmm.
So there's stories, there's a little bit of research. Every tip's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
After a few years, I had quite a few of these tips.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, I could put these in a book. I could compile them, organize them, put them into categories so that it's the kind of book you just open and you see what tip you've opened it to and read it. On the page next to it is a space where you can write about how you can use that tip,
Mm-hmm.
how it applies to your life. So really, it's a toolbox. It's not a book you sit down and read. It has 80 different short positivity tips in it.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I like theory. I mean, theory is nice, but I really, really like application. I like things to work, so it's nice sometimes to read a book where it makes me think deep, but other times I like stuff where it's just like, hey, this is the stuff you need right here to make a positive impact for yourself. I mean, I dig that a lot. So with that, obviously you've practiced a lot of those, because you wouldn't have written about them if you hadn't already tried them. So what are some of the ones, well, before we get into some of those things, I mean, when we're talking about like a positivity, what are we really referring to?
Yeah, thanks. Because a lot of people use the word happiness, even
Right.
in the psychology field. And if you dig into the science, there's a term they use called positive affect.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is positive emotions of any kind. It could be curiosity, it could be hope, it could be optimism, it could be gratitude, it could be, awe, love. There's so many different variations. Could be just simply peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so really, positivity is those positive emotions that signal in our body a whole different cascade of chemicals, different stimulation in our brain compared to stress,
Mm-hmm.
frustration, disappointment, discouragement. There's a very significant chemical change that, we hear about the fight or flight response. Maybe people hear about cortisol versus dopamine. It's so real. And
Mm-hmm.
when we can actually choose thoughts, choose strategies that help shift us towards more of this healthier, positive chemistry in our body, there's, again, so many cool benefits.
Well, it's I think a key word you brought up in there was just choice. That whole choosing, because sometimes we think that we're victim to circumstance, that there's nothing that we can really do, that things are just shitty. I have a negative mindset. This is just the way things are. And so making a choice to do something different can be a little bit difficult, because sometimes it goes against maybe our overall view on life or our personality. What are some things people could do to make that choice?
And that's exactly it. The key word is choice. I never knew I had a choice. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people do it. They don't teach it to us in school, right? But
No, I don't
really,
remember choice. I don't remember choice class.
choosing our thoughts. Uh, but really, it is positivity is a choice, and there are ways to make that choice easier. To me, that is my purpose, to help people realize they have a choice, and then for them to find ways that work for them to make that choice easier, because that's where we take back our power. We have more control over designing our life and living and being, the kind of person that we want to, that we can feel proud of, that we're excited about.
Right. But have you ever had one of those weeks, or even maybe just days, but sometimes like where you're just kind of like in a funk. I mean, just like there's a gray cloud over your head. Everything seems to just go wrong all at the same time. Usually comes in threes. Um, Sometimes I know I have a choice. I mean, I can choose how I act and interact with my environment. But sometimes, on those days or in those weeks, even for me, who's naturally a pretty, like, my set point on positivity is pretty high. But even though I know I have a choice, I don't always make that choice. Have you ever found that? I mean, with you?
Yes, yes. Oh, definitely. I think, that's part of how we're wired. Interestingly, um, some days are hard, right? Whether there's a reason, like something stressful happens, or we just don't feel good, and sometimes there isn't a reason. It's just, okay, I'm in a funk. I don't know why. And really, the message that I think is important to remember is, some days you just have to give yourself permission to say, yeah, today's kind of a crappy day. I'm either going to say, okay, I'm going to give myself a half an hour to just feel crappy, and then I'm going to force myself or push myself to go do something that will help me shift. You'd asked about strategies before. There's so many simple, easy things. I think of one. I think of just with today's technology and our devices, how easy we can tap into different music that
Mhm.
boosts our mood, that shifts, how we feel. Um, we all have our own set of favorite songs, perhaps, that can make us more energetic, that can calm us down, or that can just get us more heart-centered.
That is so true. Maybe that should have been my opening question, was like, what was your go-to tune? I mean, what was the tune that, like, it's like, because there's different ones for me. Like, I'm an 80s guy, so a lot of the music that really kind of like sets my mood a little bit higher are like strictly 80s tunes, like maybe a little Quiet Riot, Come On Feel the Noise. That'll usually do it. Or, throw on a little Bruce Springsteen because I love the boss. But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting how music, can help you make that shift. And both dynamics. Like, I know that when I'm doing, like, I just did a bathroom renovation, that I think a lot smarter and a lot clearer if I've got my classical music playlist going while I'm doing it, because normally I'm not a mechanical guy, so I have to really think things through, and not work fast. And so, that just helps my flow on flow on that. So it's interesting you
Mm,
brought up music. Another thing you brought up was, and you just gleaned over a little bit, was maybe how weather might affect our moods. I mean, like,
mm,
we live in Wisconsin. For those of you who don't know, during the winter, it doesn't get light till like 9 a.m. Then it gets dark by 4. The days are really short. They're really cold. You get tired of snow. Like, I went outside yesterday. It was 6 degrees but sunny, and I was like, "Hey, it's pretty nice outside." And I was like, "At what point in time did I make this shift where I think 6 degrees is nice?" But I mean, certainly, I mean, there are external factors like that can, uh, affect our mood. I mean, have you found that, with the with your interactions with people on, like, I don't know, like, is it seasonal affect, I don't disorder.
yep,
I don't know if that's
yep. Sad, the seasonal F.
okay.
Yeah, it's real. It's so real. And of course, we're all different, so it affects different people in different ways to different extents. But yeah, sometimes we have to be very, very purposeful and say, yes, it's, like I was looking at the forecast for the next several days. We're going to have, I mean, here it's March coming up, and we're having below zero for 5 nights in a row. What's with that?
Yeah.
So I need to be very purposeful to say, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm enjoying my wood burning stove with a fire, and make sure I focus and remind myself how nice that is. Fleece sheets, electric blanket, hot cocoa, whatever those things are that sort of help counter and shift us, so we're not focusing on the bad part of this weather, but maybe some of the things that we get to enjoy because of it.
On that shift of focus, that sounds to me like that's almost like a facet of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, I had a guy on the show, Nick Mosca, and you talking about how a lot of times mindfulness gets a kind of like I don't want to say a bad rap, but people misinterpret it and they think that you gotta meditate or something. But sometimes it's just as simple, like you were saying, is focusing in on some of those things that do bring you joy, and you're in that moment, like with your wood burning stove, and just enjoying that, or fleece sheets. I like flannel sheets. Yeah. So is that with the way you explained that? Did I interpret that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you brought up the term mindfulness. It's interesting to me. I as I was studying this positive psychology and using it and sharing it and teaching it, I was looking for a way to make it really easy to access, easy to
Mm-hmm.
use, and I came up with a framework. And it's a 5-step framework. And in the middle step in that framework is to notice our thoughts. The first step is to realize why it's hard,
Mm-hmm.
and we can talk about that. The second step is to realize we can change, and that's all about a term called neuroplasticity. The third step is notice our thoughts. Just like with AA, you can't change something, you can't shift, something till you notice where you're starting from.
Right.
And so noticing our thoughts, mindfulness, it's just paying attention in the current moment. It's like emotional intelligence. To me, all these things are interrelated.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Let's delve a little bit into that framework. I think would be a great takeaway for our listeners here, is to have something they can take away of like, hey, how do I apply some of this stuff in my life? So
Mhm.
can we get into that just a little bit?
Yes, definitely. So I'm just going to back up, give you a little bit more context. So realizing why it's hard. This is a big thing. This was huge for me. It turns out that we are wired. We have this survival instinct that is so strong, so fast, and it's all focused on how to keep ourselves safe, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing. We need to survive. We need to stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
But what that means is that we get really focused on and remember all the dangers, all the problems, anything that even might be a problem, and we tend to dwell on it and ruminate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big chunk, and there's additional reasons why it's hard. Another reason why it can be hard is genetics. We probably all know some people who tend to be a little bit more on the negative side, and maybe some people are even, whoa, they're so positive. Where do they get that from? So genetics can really play a big role in also why it's hard for people.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in that area, where do you actually physically stop and write down, maybe what you're thinking, or you just think about your thinking? I mean, is there a process for, understanding, because I have things that I just won't do because they might be hard. It doesn't have to be really about safety. Maybe like emotional safety, because I know that it might not work out the way I want. Maybe I feel rejected, or maybe I'm going to feel frustrated or angry. So that might be part of it. So is there a process for dissecting that a little bit?
Well, that will actually come up more in step 4.
Okay, cool. All right. I don't want to jump ahead. Don't want to jump ahead,
Oh,
but
sure. You're just
yeah.
uh,
Okay. All right. Cool.
you're
All right. So understanding, that. All right. Very
yeah,
good. What's the next then?
yeah. So understanding why it's hard, just recognizing that, giving yourself permission that that's the way it is. The second step is to realize that we can change. 20 years ago, science pretty much said once you're an adult, your brain is done changing. You are who you are.
Right.
Now with new technology like functional MRI, they can see that really at any age, our brains are constantly changing. There's new neural connections forming, and of course, some old ones going away. Um, but the exciting thing here is there's now a term called self-directed neuroplasticity. This idea that by choosing what we focus on, getting better at noticing and thinking about the good stuff around us, right? Because our survival brain, that part of our brain says, boring, you can
Mm-hmm.
ignore anything good because it's not a danger, you don't need to take action.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get better at being intentional about that, we are actually rewiring our brain. They can physically see the changes in people's brains when they start, practicing these strategies.
I love that. I love that concept of self-directed neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
That is really cool. That certainly gives you a little bit more control over your circumstances, if you think about it in those terms. Is that I don't have to think about it like this. I can really think about it a little bit different. So that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, it's like like, oh, you only have a set of number. Like we grew up. I'm a little bit older than you, but people telling you like, we only have so many brain cells. You're gonna kill them all. I'm like, no, I don't think that's really true. So
is that, yeah, because that's what they thought. And now they realize, no, we really can generate new brain cells, and we can create stronger connections and different habits. We think of habits usually as something external from us, but habits are also in the way that we think. And when we reinforce those connections in our brains, those habits become stronger, those good habits.
right, very cool, very cool. I like that. All right, next step.
Okay, yeah. So self-directed neuroplasticity, we have this superpower. Third step, okay, if we're going to change, we have to start by noticing our thoughts. Thinking about our thinking. Kind of sounds a little creepy maybe, but it's this idea that we can step back and become the observer and not just the participant. We can notice how we're reacting, we can notice what we're thinking, and suddenly there's kind of a cool little phrase that has been developed in positive psychology called "name it to tame it."
And we'll be right back with that interview with Tina, but now it's time for Fun Facts. Fun Facts is where we share facts about humor, laughter, sometimes the absurd. And this week's fact comes from Peter Jonas's book, The Secrets of Connecting Leadership and Learning with Humor. And in the book, he talks about some different myths of using humor. And I really liked myth number 5 of I can't be funny. And he writes, wrong. Everyone can learn to be funnier. You might not wind up on Saturday Night Live, but you can learn the tricks of the trade to integrate humor into your daily activities, speeches, meetings, and conversations. You didn't know how to drive when you were 15, but you learned. Like leadership, there are certain characteristics and concepts to learn to make it happen. And a great place to learn how to be funnier and just to appreciate humor is within our own association. Check it out at AATH.org. If you're not a member, you should be. Giddy up, yes sirree. So let's get back to that interview with Tina.
Yeah, what? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
So you step back, you observe, and say, oh, look at this. I'm replaying that conversation with my spouse that I had this morning, this argument that we had. Notice that you're stuck in that replaying, and then you can name it and say, yeah, I'm dwelling on this. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling upset about it. And just by sort of stepping out of it and putting a label on it helps us analyze it rather than like get sucked into the drama and just dwell on it.
Right. Yeah, it sometimes amazes me that we as human beings, we kind of rehearse things in our head all wrong. And I like that concept, name it to tame it, that we tell ourselves sometimes, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. And then when it turns out bad, we're surprised. We've kind of predisposed ourselves to that outcome, because we've set ourselves up all along the way, for that. So, but I guess that's just part of human nature. We all do that. But, stepping outside certainly would be and looking at it differently would be a great strategy for dealing with it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. It is human nature. And when we can say, that's okay, but then also realize that we have the power, that superpower, to override it, to choose differently, to notice it in the moment. Say, yeah, there's my survival instinct kicking in, making me, replay this argument, but I'm going to take action.
Very good, very good. All right, so are we ready for the next step?
Yay!
All right, hit it.
Step 4. To me, it's the most fun step. It's practicing tools to change. It's this idea that there are these simple, easy strategies that we can do that helps shift our thinking, reinforce those new habits and ways of thinking. And it's funny because a lot of these, most of us already know, but now there's science behind it to help support that this is beneficial. This is worth taking the time to do.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about music, for example. Using that intentionally, not waiting for our favorite song to come on, but planning and knowing, hey, you know what, in this moment right now, I need a boost. I'm going to take action by pulling up this soundtrack, this playlist of mine.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Another great strategy, here's a fun one. It's a fake smile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Professor Richie Davidson, he's at UW-Madison, a big thought leader in compassion, well-being, positive psychology. He published a book called The Emotional Life of Your Brain. And in there, he talks about some research he did, and others have also duplicated it. But if you do a fake smile with just your mouth and your cheeks, nothing happens. But if you also just activate those little muscles like under and around your eyes when you do a natural smile, how you kind of get those little creases around there,
Mm-hmm.
then using things like functional MRI, they can see that the part of our brain that's activated is the part that tells us that we feel good, that we're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is an experiment we can run ourselves. We can experiment, play with this. This is one of my favorite ones. If I'm driving in the car, on the phone, you might be in a rush. You might just be sort of, I'm not looking forward to whatever I'm gotta go do today. A little fake smile, hold it for a few seconds, and I feel a big shift. Suddenly, it's a much easier smile. My thoughts have shifted. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. I found the same thing, that just that mirror, but some, like I said, like on those gray days, I really have to force myself to do that. So, yeah. Luckily, they don't last all that long, but yeah. It's one of those things. What are some other positive interventions that you use to kind of make that shift? What are, that's a good one. What are some other ones that sometimes people, because what's interesting, what you said to me was that there are things that we know, but now we have science behind it. Like all the things that, key sayings, or proverbs from other countries, whatever, that we grow up with. We're like, oh, that's a nice saying, but now there's actually some science to go behind it. It's just kind of like, it's kind of a cool thing to think about, is that we've known inherently all this time what is good for us, but we have just chosen not to listen. But now we can say, oh, well, it's not just fluffy stuff. I mean, this is actually real. This is scientific.
Yeah, I mean, things like count your blessings, right? Stop and smell the roses. Pretty much almost everybody's heard these things. And it's funny, I forget who I was talking to, but I was thinking how for really since the days of the early philosophers like Socrates, this idea, these concepts are so ancient. How come we're so horrible at actually embracing them and using them? And I don't know, again, I'm hopeful, optimistic that the science will maybe help convince people that this isn't just a philosophy. This is stuff that we can bring in, try out in our own lives, and use it to actually change our lives for the better. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah. Okay. But when you're going out there and sharing this with different audiences, because you're a speaker, like I'm a speaker, and you share with that, are there some people that are just like, no, that's all just BS? I mean, we're not listening to any of this stuff. I'm going to sit here in my own cesspool of negativity, and you can all just kiss it. So, I mean, do you find those people?
Oh, yes. Yes. And here's the thing. So this is such an interesting aha moment for me, and I'm probably for others too. It's like, if I get a negative response from other people, my trick is for myself to realize, hey, you know what? That's their choice. Rather than feeling stressed, upset, discouraged by that, it's really just saying, we're all different. We all have a choice, and this is their choice. Maybe I can plant a seed that will germinate and grow at some point later down the line. Maybe there's this idea that other people's struggles, negativity, really can be a good teacher for ourselves. It can be a great way to reflect on, if this person's bothering me, what is it about me that's struggling with it? Why can I not just accept them for where they're at and what they're doing? Which is hard, because like you say, if I'm speaking to a group and I have a naysayer in the group, hopefully they're a quiet naysayer, but sometimes people speak out and challenge. And I think that's great, because then I'll say things like, you know what, this is a choice. And if this is not a choice for you, that's fine. You have to make your own decisions about what works for you. And if this
Right.
doesn't work for you right now, no problem.
Right. Yeah. Because I've just found that there are some people that they just want to stay kind of like stay where they're at.
Yeah.
And because change in any way, shape, or form is difficult, and some people are comfortable with that. And that, I don't want to say that negative place in their lives, and they want to stay there. I mean, emotions aren't good or bad. I mean, they are what they are. And so sometimes people have to feel what they feel. However, I'd much rather feel better.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us would, and just don't know how. So for those of us that are willing, interested, want to know more and know how, to me, there's always some of those in the audience. And what's cool is when we can help those people elevate their set point, like you were saying, your positivity set point, there's a ripple effect, right? It spreads. Our moods and our energy is contagious. So even those people who resist, they're probably still soaking up a little more positivity than when the people around them are shifting.
They're sitting at home that night. It's like, I just feel a little bit happier than I did this morning. How do I get back to that place I was before? I'm not going to hang around those happy people anymore. That's funny. Now, what about the last step?
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to review here real quick. We started off with why it's hard, just our survival instinct, realizing we can change, that self-directed neuroplasticity, that superpower, noticing our thoughts, practicing these different strategies like music, smiling, gratitude, counting our blessings. And the last step is really, how do we remember? It's remembering we have a choice. Because there's so much distraction, everyone's so busy. How do we even, step out of our busy schedule and remember these strategies, remember we have a choice? So I have a variety of what I call reminder tips. So here's an example. So if you have a password, you could use this every time you type it in. Maybe it's the first letter of a phrase, every word in a phrase, or your favorite song, a favorite memory, a strategy, something you're grateful for. But every time you type it in, you have to repeat that phrase in your head to remember your password. And now maybe you have that favorite song going through your head, or that favorite memory, or, it could be a tool to prompt you.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. That's all. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I guess inherently I do that because I have like passwords that mean something, to me. I won't share them on here because they're my passwords. But that's kind of funny because like one of them has to do with my granddaughter. When I type it in, I automatically think about her, and it and she makes me happy. So that's and something I was doing, but I didn't realize I was really doing it. But now I do, and now I'll be more intentional about it. That's smart. That's a great strategy. That's a great strategy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and another one I love is whether it's on our devices, our bathroom mirror, our cubicle, our refrigerator, to put either pictures or quotes, something that every time we see it, it can be that trigger that says, oh yeah, what am I thinking about right now? Should I shift because here's a picture of a great memory, here's a saying. When I first started speaking, a gentleman in the audience shared a quote with me that I try to share at almost every talk I give. I think it's so powerful. It's by the author Colette. It says, "What a wonderful life I've had. I just wish I'd realized it sooner."
Wow. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
That is a great quote. Really makes you stop and think a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of busyness with life. I mean, I look back on like, I don't want to say I missed out on a lot of joy in my 20s and my 30s, but I certainly was very, very work oriented and very, very driven. And, there were things that looking back, I wish I would have enjoyed more of when I was there, and I can't go back to those times and, have a mulligan and do it over. But I just wish that I had done it a little bit differently, mainly because my kids are all grown and there are just some things I like with working as much as I worked. I know I missed out on, and I should have been more in that moment. So that's why I tell everybody now, it goes so fast, enjoy it. And they're like, everybody says that. I'm like, that's because it's freaking true, buddy. It's true.
Isn't it? It is so true. But you start to hear it so often, you just don't even pay attention to it. But it's so, so true. And you can't get those moments back. But now, starting in this moment, right, moving forward, you can be more in the moment, more mindful, more intentional about enjoying those moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I really, I enjoyed, talking to you. I mean, obviously we talk all the time, but it's nice to delve a little bit deeper into, the things that you're really passionate about, and, realizing as we're talking how much we're aligned in, our thoughts on many of the same things. And I like your whole frameworks. I think it's something tangible that people can, take with them. It's like, you know what? All right. I can do this, and your whole, your application piece at the end on, reminding people they have a choice. I love those strategies you gave. Really, really great. If after today people want to connect with you, I mean, where's the best place to find Dr. Tina Hallis?
So thepositiveedge.net is my website. You can also go to tinahallis.com and get there. I love emails. You can also call me at 608-448-3576. But again, the book, it's on Amazon. It's pretty much anywhere. There's an ebook version. It's called Sharpen Your Positive Edge. And because I commonly get a question after my talks, and when people just are reaching out to me, they're like, hey, how do I get other people to be more positive, right? My boss, my coworker, my partner. So be on the lookout for a new online course coming out in a few months called Keep Your Positive Edge.
Nice.
Yeah, it's building your immunity to people's negativity, and I'm so excited about it. It's going to be so awesome.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Let me know when that comes out, because it's something I'm interested in as well. Because I mean, there is a leveling out. I mean, if you're surrounded by like negative people, it's going to impact your overall outlook on the world and your life. And so, I mean, you have to have some strategies on how to create a force field so they don't bring you down. So I'm really interested in that. Now, I would like to end the podcast. I instituted this a couple podcasts ago with 5 questions. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Just your first response is good enough, and we'll look to wrap up with that. All right, are you ready, Tina Hallis?
Okay, I'm ready.
Right. Tina, who's your favorite comedian?
I like Eddie Murphy before he got really raw, I guess. I love his movies, like Trading Places and.
All right. So back when I was funny because I think all comedians kind of go through a process where they're a little more edgy when they're they first start out, and then they drink the Kool-Aid and they're not as funny later. All right. Second question: what's your go-to funny movie?
My go-to funny movie is probably, again, one of those Eddie Murphy ones. I like, what's it called? The Golden Child. There's that scene where the Golden Child is sitting in the car next to him, and Eddie Murphy's driving, and there's a big monster dragon chasing him, and he's just like looking at this kid who's just so calm. He's like, I don't know about you, but this kind of shit doesn't happen to us every day where I live. Pardon my French.
That's awesome. All right. What's your favorite kind of comedy? Like.
I guess it's funny. I've definitely noticed that my husband and I do not have the same sense of humor. and he'll be like, oh, you got to come watch this video. Or him and my daughter, who's 13 right now, oh, you got to come watch this. And usually their sense of humor is like some poor schmuck doing something not very smart where he gets hurt or, embarrassed. And I'm like, oh, I feel bad for those people. So my humor I like is really... I like just like the situational humor where there's just something bizarre that happens that makes a situation just funny.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So you and I are going out to dinner. Where are we going to go eat?
Is there an occasion, or are we just you and I? We meet somewhere and we're going to go out to eat.
You create the scenario. I don't care.
Oh gosh, I say that because when you have a 13-year-old daughter, pretty much the main place that we go is Culver's all the time.
I love Culver's. And for those of you who don't live in the Midwest, you can't go better than a Culver's burger. I'm just telling you right there, dollar for dollar, it's the best deal you're going to get right there.
There you go, a little advertisement.
All right. Last question, do you have a favorite joke?
Oh gosh, I do.
Awesome.
So
then you have to share it. Yeah, then that's the best kind.
Okay, so I am Norwegian, and so I like, the different Norwegian jokes. And so there's one about, now Oli and what's the other guy's name usually?
Sven,
thank you.
Yes.
So they're out of work and they're waiting in line to, like the unemployment line, and they're going to be evaluated for their skills to know if they should go and apply for a skilled job or an unskilled job. And Sven gets up there and the guy says, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I work, I don't really have any skills. And so the guy goes, oh, well, you got to go into the unskilled line. And then up comes the next guy and he says, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm a diesel fitter. A diesel fitter? Oh, that's a skilled, ability. You got to go in the other line. And Sven says to him, he's like, you're not a diesel fitter. He goes, I sure am. I work in ladies' underwear and I hold them up and I'll say, diesel fitter. Okay, I killed that joke. I cannot tell jokes.
That's all right.
But hopefully you get the idea.
I got the idea. It's awesome. It's awesome. Hey, well, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate the time, and I appreciate you sharing some great strategies with me.
Yes, thanks so much, Chip. This was great fun. Loved it.
Well, there you are. Great fun with Tina Hallis and great information. I'm going to encourage you to go to her website, check her out, shoot her an email. She's on LinkedIn. She's all over the place, and she's got some great things to share. I'm also going to encourage you to go to our website, AATH.org. Send us a note, drop us a line, join the association. And if you got something you want to hear on the show, shoot me an email at chip@unconventionalleader.com. I would love to hear about it and about you. Further, if you got something you want to share as far as a fun fact, I'm always looking for new things to incorporate in there, and I would love to share your fun fact on the show. So until next time, this is Chip Lutz saying, we'll keep the laugh on for you.
This is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Laughbox is made possible by a grant from the National Speakers Foundation and is brought to you by AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. Find out more at AATH.org. Be sure to review Laughbox on iTunes. For show notes and more information about today's conversation, visit laughbox.aath.org.